It's been a whole 10 minutes.
Whoa. So we are doing, for the two of us, our last race for the day. So hopefully this one will be super exciting.
So I'm actually looking forward to this one. We had another great race from the Saban and Almegas, which was something I was looking forward to. But this was the one I was looking forward to next because about a week ago, I raced both of these runners.
Ooh.
Uh, it was a particularly great race for me because I ran into a little bit of trouble at Welk, and I was a little nervous for that race. This was just a normal SRL race for practice.
Yeah, and it's even worse when you get those sort of things happening in what should just be a plain normal race, and then suddenly things tank. You're like, oh goodness, what is happening?
So if you're around before, you know what these runners are doing. But if you just tuned in, you're going to see both of our runners soak up XP on Terra by running away with our two soldiers. Um, we want Terra to get to a certain level before we get any other new party members. We would like her to get to level 6, and these encounters actually give quite a lot of experience. So, really nice if you're able to get your soldiers to run away properly. Looks
It
like
most certainly
neither of
is.
them are having any problems.
It's right, they're not. So between these fights here and the ones in the caves, we are looking to get Terra up to level 6. There is a chain of experience which occurs in this game, so we want to make sure that everyone hits the level points at the right times to make sure that everyone does get the relevant experience. So currently, that's what they're doing by making these guys run.
Right. So when a new character joins the party, their level is based on the average party level. So when Locke joins the party, it's going to look at Terra's level, and that's going to add an additional level on top of that. So if Terra's level 6, Locke joins at level 7. The same thing you see for every new character that joins the party. It's going to be based on that average party level. So if you can just do a little bit of grinding to get your average party level up 1, then uh, you'll get extra levels. And it looks like on LilSharkie's screen, it looks like he might have not done the encounter manipulation properly because he got into an extra attack. Sorry, an extra encounter that we didn't see jshydell get into. So it's curious to see what encounter seed LilSharkie is on and what encounters he's going to get into, because something that both runners did before the run started is set the encounter seed so they know what encounters they're going to get into.
Yeah,
And on
and again, yeah,
jshydell,
go ahead.
oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, and that's going to be especially important again because we are routing experience. So knowing what encounters are coming makes it much easier for us to just know what battles are coming and which ones are important to fight or not. So if he's not actually on the right seed, not only is he not going to be able to track and know in advance what battles he has to fight, but he is also going to be at a disadvantage because it does mean he's not going to be able to set up his river manipulation. So that will be certainly unfortunate as well.
So it looks like jshydell did get the quick kill on Welk by ATB waiting properly and doing a counter cancel to kind of pause Welk a little bit so that the head doesn't sneak inside the shell. You're able to sneak in enough turns with Terra to do 3 tech missiles. See if jshydell is able to do the same. Uh,
Certainly be
looks like
fabulous if you
he
can.
missed the timing just a little bit. I didn't actually see why he missed it.
No, I didn't either.
Usually the variance in this fight comes down to when Terra. Ooh, okay. So looks like we might have a little bit of a repeat of what we saw in the last fight, but we do have 2 of our soldiers alive. Terra being down means that It's gonna take a bit of a long time to get out of this fight. Uh-oh. Bolt beam. Little
Oh,
Sharky.
that
Okay, never mind.
okay.
I
Yeah.
I think it's the shell. Yeah, you can't attack the shell with Bolt beam.
Yeah, it gets particular. Like, it's bad attacking the shell with anything, but using Bolt Beam against the shell is particularly bad. Now, Little Sharky is an advantage to the previous race we just had because he does have both Bix and Wedge alive, so he will be able to do extra damage. But the disadvantage here is they are both still slowed.
It's probably, if I had to guess, it's probably going to add about 2 minutes to this fight. The other thing that Little Sharky could have done to kind of mess up and got him into that encounter we saw early from him, if he tried to load the seed from a like if he wasn't doing the seed manipulation like if he did it much before the run, and if he just powered on the game, even if it's on the right seed, it wouldn't be at the right threat level. So he'd get into an encounter much earlier than expected. So it's really hard to know what the case is until more of the run progresses and we kind of see what encounters he gets into. It's still potentially possible for him to do the river manipulation depending on what situation he's in.
Absolutely. And you are seeing again why, like, Welk is a beginning boss, so you'd think it'd be really easy, but it just shows what can go wrong with these quick kills because they're pretty precise in their timing. So if you're off on those timings at all, then you're hitting that shell with the extra attacks, and it's why we heal up Terra anyways. It's because just in case the one counter we do on purpose is a single target, that she doesn't die. So the chances of her dying if the timing is off at all, as you've seen now twice in a row, is pretty high. But with Jshydell being on the proper encounter seed, he knows exactly where he's going to get his encounters, and he will fight all of them up until just before the cutscene trigger to continue the plot. And then he will just have to grind out one extra encounter to trigger that, and that will get his Terra to level 6. She will learn Antidote, and he will be able to progress. So as you see, walking back and forth right before the trigger, because I'm sure many of us have all had this situation where you just walk a tiny bit too far up and you are into the cutscene whether you're ready for it or not. So we all
Definitely never had that happen
never
before.
ever. So you very quickly learn where the optimal, where that trigger is pretty quickly, especially after making that mistake. So there's a lot of mistakes which, as runners, the more you do this run, you just become really accustomed to, because chances are they have happened to you at least once. Hopefully only once, but at least once. So both of them into their cutscene triggers. We will be renaming most of the characters down to one character name. The reasoning for this is that all of the text in this game scrolls. So between all of the many cutscenes that we have and the different character names, it saves frames and I believe actual seconds, even in an hour and a half run. So it's worth it. The only character in this run we do not rename is Shadow because he only has 3 text boxes, so it is generally just not even worth it to rename him. I think you save more time by just keeping his default name.
Yeah, it kind of comes down to how quick you're able to do that rename. But I think for pretty much any normal person, it ends up saving more time if you just don't do anything than truncating his name to just S.
Exactly.
So we'll see how much Little Sharky has to grind here, because whether he's on a different seed or he's not on the right number of steps. We're not really sure. So we'll find out how much he has to do some extra grinding here.
Yeah, and I'm gonna ask to please not post any links in the chat. Um, if you could please. So, let us know if there's some information you want to pass along, and we will attempt to do such.
Looks like we didn't have to do too much grinding. He did. LilSharkie did do all the ran away from all the fights properly, so he was able to not have to grind a whole bunch of extra fights. Just the normal. You kind of walk your way up there and then do an extra fight to get Terra to level 6. And meanwhile, on jshydell's stream, he is starting the 3-party section of the run. So the game is kind of opening tutorial of how to operate in these multi-party scenarios. The game expects you to fight some encounters on your way down to the Marshal, but that takes a long time, and the game doesn't expect that you can just kind of walk past some of those encounters. Go straight for the Marshal. And casually, most people know which party has Mog in it. And of course, Mog being particularly high level and with pretty good equipment, that's the party that we're going to take down there. And you see when jshydell is walking past those wolves, if you walk past them as they're in their walking animation, their hitbox doesn't register. And you're just able to walk past them. You have to do it twice there, and then you just can fight the Marshal. Marshal has a habit of opening up with net, and looks like jshydell got a little unlucky on the target. Kupan does the second highest damage in this fight, but
So having a Kupan netted like that is really unhappy, but still better than Mog, because we are looking to steal that Mithril Pike and hopefully also the shield from him. As he is a player character, we do in this fight have access to his items, unlike the other characters here.
nice crit from Cuckoo.
Yeah, we always love those.
Pretty good pace from jshydell so far.
Definitely. His current PB, according to his splits, is 135.58. So who knows? This could be a new PB for him. We'll see how the rest of the run goes, as it is still early days.
During my race with him last week, he was actually on pace to get a sub 130, which would have been quite the substantial PB. But and he was actually ahead of me for a bit, but he had some pretty unfortunate luck in the Serpent Trench and took a death there and had to reload his save.
It's
really
why,
unfortunate.
Yeah, it's why of all the places to safety save, before the Serpent Trench is certainly one of them. It is just one of those places you can lose so much time, and even with the safety save, you can lose a lot of time. Unfortunately, though, waiting in the wrong spot. Oh,
Okay,
he's
I think
going
he's
that way.
fine,
Okay,
yeah.
no, apparently that spot is a-okay. No,
It's
LilSharkie's got this. Yeah.
Yeah, it takes a little bit longer because you have to wait a little bit further up, but it still works as long as you're fast enough.
Yep, so it's better than taking the encounter for sure.
Ooh, a crit from Mog. He's gonna have to make sure to de-equip Mog's equipment before Mog gets a second turn. Okay, he's doing so.
Which is great. I know for safety, I always unequip Mog on the second turn anyways. Because, yeah, if you happen to get those crits, which are generally really what you want, yeah, you risk not being able to get those items, and that is unfortunate.
Wouldn't be the end of the world. It really just affects Ultras, making it a little bit harder Take even if you're doing it optimally, it makes it take like 10 extra seconds. And if you don't do it quite optimally, you have the potential of not doing enough damage. But not the worst thing in the world if it does happen.
Yeah, because again, Ultros is one of those scary fights in this run, so while it's probably not devastating, it really could be. So again, renaming Edgar down to E, and Locke was previously renamed to L, just makes lots of scrolling text faster. So lots more plot and exposition on both sides. It's completely delightful. One of the things I do enjoy about this speedrun is it's unfortunate because it makes the game slower, but there is a limit to how fast you can get rid of the text boxes. So you can generally still read all of the text all throughout. So you can get your story and your speedrun.
I personally would like it if the text boxes went a little bit faster
I
and the
would certainly
cutscenes
accept that.
were a little bit faster.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Oh, and have an even
Especially,
shorter run? It'd be beautiful. Oh yeah,
yeah.
LilSharkie getting an extra encounter there. So definitely not ideal because any encounter that you get within this game is one which you can experience on the Veldt. So not always a good thing. So, a lot of the beginning of this run is just simply introducing and renaming our characters, which is quite an important mechanic of the game because it's not even just about naming what do you want your characters named. The way this game processes the characters and where they're stored is really tied into that section where you rename them. And we're going to see a prime example of how this is important later on. So, keep watching.
Yeah, so like the game only has so many character slots it can hold. And this game has a lot of characters, so to be able to do that, it has to share some of those character slots. And there's some situations you can do, not only the one that we'll see later on, but other glitches that aren't too timely, where you can have an interesting party full of characters that you wouldn't imagine.
That is very, very true. And now introducing our antagonist, Kefka! Woo! Antagonist of not just the game, but this specific run.
I think he's the antagonist of all the categories of this run, or this game, except the any percent version. Any percent is kind of an interesting category because you die 52 times and then it's game over. I think you're your own antagonist of that version of the run,
I
but
think
all the
so
other.
for choosing to run it, though. No, actually, it's apparently it's a fabulous run because, like you say, you die 52 times and win.
There's a little more technical stuff that happens
No
there,
way, it's
but
exactly as easy as it sounds. Wait.
it's not the most interesting run to either watch or play. But from a technical standpoint, it's very interesting the way that glitch works.
Yeah, absolutely. But instead, we get the slightly more interesting and filled with oh so glorious cutscenes of Kefka and Narshe. Don't you play a fair amount of this section of the game in that any percent run?
Yeah, you still have to at least for RTA purposes. Uh, the task does it a little bit differently, but
Of course.
for people who actually do this speed run of it, you get through up to Vargas, and then that's where the stopping point is. That's where you'll kill yourself off.
Gotcha.
I believe the task is able to do the same thing outside of Narshe. I'm not 100% sure, as I haven't actually watched it, but doing so makes it quite a bit faster. But the way that you perform, like you have to do a lot of frame perfect stuff, as I understand it. So not something that us mere humans can really handle.
I was gonna say if only we could all be as good. But um Right now, instead, us mere humans get to watch Kefka being not a very nice dude, both torturing his soldiers, making them clean sand off his boots, and waking poor Edgar up here because it seems that Kefka's really not very happy that you say no to him, and or not so much no, but deny having the person he is looking for. So he sets this beautiful stone castle on fire. Not very nice, Kefka. Not very nice. And I guess a phantom train run of this game would be like a slightly longer Octoman percent of Final Fantasy IV. No, Edgar, he says, no, I'm done playing along with the Empire. We are taking a stand here. And you may have set my castle on fire, but me and my friends, we're out of here. And just so happens, Edgar happens to be a mechanical genius. So not only is this just a really cool stone castle, it is also mechanical. So the arms come in, and it is currently going into what he called dive mode. So it is going below the sand. And you know what puts out fire really, really well? Sand. So down it goes. And Kefka is as displeased as usual about that and sends these two Magitech armors after you. So, the big thing about this fight is not to use magic at all, because doing so triggers a cutscene which is 40 seconds long, and we just don't want to deal with that. Plus, you still have to complete the entire battle. But we have Edgar with his auto crossbow, and which does total party damage for quite a bit of damage. At this point in the game, it is really OP. So we use that, and 2 hits, and those Magitech armors are toast.
Pretty good time from jshydell going so far. He's up quite a bit ahead of his splits. Anything under 22 minutes for Magitech is a pretty good measuring stick for kind of how well the first part of your run went. If I had to guess, LilSharkie's probably about a minute and a half behind him.
Which really isn't that bad, especially considering if there's so many different spots left in the game to either gain or lose time in your run. So plenty of potential to equalize this up. So let's definitely see how it goes.
Yeah, over an hour left in this run. The only thing that I'm not too sure how it's going to turn out is what we still don't really know exactly what encounter seed LilSharkie's on, so we don't know how that's going to play out. But yeah, the fights we have to jshydell has to make sure that he executes the rest of the run if he wants to make sure to keep his lead and even hope for a little bit of good RNG.
Yeah, because as technical as this game is, this run is, and execution heavy, there is unfortunately, like many of these games, just RNG you have to deal with. So, something else you have to deal with is, to continue on with the experience routing, is they have to kill all or most of the fights in this cave. If you're on step route, then you will defeat all of the enemies you come across. It is only if you're not. There's a double hornet encounter that you avoid, because not only is it annoying, but it doesn't give enough experience to make it worth it. Quite a little bit of experience, I believe. So otherwise, Edgar with his auto crossbow, he one-shots everything in the battles. Those Blearies, there is a chance that he won't one-shot them, but so long as he goes first, Locke and Terra are there in wait, ready to just single attack and finish off any remainers. But honestly, most of the time there aren't any. They just all get destroyed by the beautiful nature that is the auto crossbow.
Yeah, I think they have 119 HP on the dot, if I remember correctly.
That sounds about right from what I've been seeing from these runs.
And you're looking at jshydell's screen, and you kind of notice that he's pausing a little bit in between his steps. He's actually making sure he's hitting particular tiles that won't generate threat for him. And it's important to do throughout the run because the more you do that, you're going to be able to skip an encounter if you hit enough of those tiles over the course of the whole run. And especially if you want to make sure to, um, particularly for the Veld, to get certain encounters instead of others, you want to make sure to hit those. It's kind of hard when you're first learning, kind of hard to know exactly what tiles those are, but as you learn to run, you know exactly what tiles to take and exactly where to walk.
Exactly, and like he was saying, on the world map it is particularly important. Outside of the world map, anywhere that there's encounters, the general rule is just take the shortest path because it doesn't have those no encounter tiles.
Yeah, they're really rare outside of the world map because it has to be a special like event tile. Like, oh, there's an event that happens on this tile, so it won't
Exactly.
generate threat. And that's pretty, at least at the start of the this game. Those are pretty rare.
Yeah.
I can actually only think of one, which happens to be in the South Figaro Cave, but it also happens to be on the shortest path anyway, so you don't have to think about it.
Which works out beautifully. So jshydell is walking through the cave, and the general rule here, especially if you're not on step route, is to avoid the encounters inside, as they either can't just be one shot by the auto crossbow, or they don't give enough experience. And to fight encounters outside, hoping for at least one 4-pack encounter. But making sure to go out of his way to pick up the Atlas armlet in that chest, which increases the damage from the auto crossbow, so he also equips it right away. So very useful to have on Edgar for the rest of the run. Along with making sure to, walk as best he can. And LilSharkie just leaving the Figaro Cave, so not worrying too much about his step route there. Though even if you are not on your step route, it is a good idea to learn where those no encounter tiles, because no encounter is still no encounter.
Do you see jshydell took an extra step in this area because he wanted to make sure to get that 4-pack encounter with the Tuskers and the Cypresses because it just gives a lot of experience. He was also trying to make sure to run away with Locke because you want to have Locke run at least from one of those 4 enemy encounters. Just because the distribution of experience you need, Locke needs a little bit less than Terra and Edgar end up needing. So we'll see if he's able to run. He wasn't able to run away with Locke in the first fight. Let's see if he's able to run away in the second fight with Locke.
Yeah, because again, the run mechanics are that each character has an individual runaway gauge that they have to fill up before they can run away. Plus, the characters can only run away while their ATB bar is full. So the basic strategy here is to make both Terra and Edgar attack. And while their ATB bars are not full, have Locke run away. And also, in between, be filling up his bar. But the dangerous part, especially in this fight, is if Terra also runs away. So it's why you have to set it up fairly precisely and have your party running as consistently and constantly as possible without actually having people run away.
There's still a third encounter that's going to be one of those high experience formations. So he has a third chance to get Locke to run away. The first encounter, for whatever reason, happens to be Locke just fails to run away, but generally the second encounter goes a little bit better, but he looks like he struggles a little bit. Let's see if he can get this third encounter. If not, he's just going to have to take a few extra encounters to make sure that Edgar and Terra get to the experience points they're looking for.
Yeah, because those experience points are really important. You need to get Edgar, Locke, and Terra to levels 10, 9, and 8 respectively. Because as new characters join you, they come based on an average level. So Sabin at those levels will join at level 11, which is the first level which he has Aura Bolt, which we put to great use. So it is very important that he has that. So otherwise we have to grind extra encounters with him to gain that, so that would just take even more time. So where LilSharkie is not on a step route, he's gonna have to just take what he gets, and if and when he gets that 4-pack encounter, then he will do the same strategy on it, hopefully. Or again, we'll just have to grind encounters. The other thing they are all trying to do while on this mountain is to keep an eye on Terra's MP, because she needs a certain minimum amount before you go into the Vargas fight in order to make sure she has enough MP to do the damage required. So, and as you can see, those Trilliums are not very nice and have an attack called Bane Touch, which does poison you. So, you don't want poison while you're walking, though it's not as deadly to have while you are, while you're in the fight, but, jshydell took the extra time and sold an item in order to get extra money, so he could not only buy his 3 packs of sprint shoes, but to also get the extra star pendant, which as soon as it's equipped on someone, will remove antidote. So it's a really nice safety that you can do, saving Terra's MP.
I didn't actually see if Terra hit level 8 there, because I know he didn't get all the runaways he was really looking for.
She did get a level in that last battle.
Okay, so that was probably her level 8. Usually you can run away from a few fights at the end there, but he just opted to take every fight.
I think especially where he couldn't get Locke to run, I think he had to take those extra
definitely.
So, general strategy here for Vargas is for Edgar and Terra to fight first with auto crossbow and fire respectively, and then Locke to get rowed into the front row so he can avoid extra damage from the bears, but so he can do more damage on Vargas. So, how exactly all of the attacks work between attacking and waiting does depend on what Vargas's first attack is, because we are attempting to skip his first attack, which once Sabin shows up, which is Doomfist, as that saves some time. I don't know the actual setup for that, so I could not tell you whether it happened or not.
I didn't see any ATB waiting, but I also wasn't paying attention to when Vargas took the first turn. Looks like he got the immediate Doomfist, which is actually good. It loses like maybe a second versus maybe 5 to 10 seconds if Vargas waited until Sabin was going to take a turn and then did the Doomfist. So it's not the Doomfist skip, but it's a slight variation on it, and it still saves a number of seconds. So looks like jshydell did that pretty well given the situation.
Absolutely, and he did save some more time, so he's doing well on his splits. LilSharkie having a little problem with HP, and he did just get Edgar poisoned, but still doing pretty fine, I believe. Currently, Terra has enough HP, so and they do currently have all of the correct levels, so he can go right into the Vargas fight, which he has done. So that works out quite well for him. We'll see how his fight goes while jshy goes through the talkie bits.
Yeah. LilSharkie entering the fight just as jshydell exiting the fight. Probably looking at no more than 2 minutes difference between the two.
So again, that could take a turn at any number of points in the run, because we still have approximately an hour left. Definitely be curious to see how this all plays out. I do see that Locke is in the front row before both bears are gone, so hopefully he can get the bears killed before they decide, which he did, before they decide to wail on Locke, because he is squishy, and we do not want that. We need him to survive for that extra damage. And we'll see here now if jshy takes the safety save outside of the Returner's Cave after this extra encounter. I think he missed some of the tiles on the world map.
You don't have to hit all of them, as long as if your steps are good enough. But his steps weren't good enough. So you noticed how he got into that encounter immediately before the returner
Mm-hmm.
cave, that's going to kind of throw off at the beginning of Saban's scenario. So he's not going to get an encounter. It's going to throw off the step route, basically.
Even with the
Uh,
river manip?
even so, he's going to be on the right seed, but his threat level is going to be not at the
Aha.
proper amount. You want to you want to get into one encounter on the walk up to Returner Cave, and you want to make sure to get into that cave um, before you get to that second encounter. What he should have done is actually burn a few steps there just to get his threat a little bit higher, and then once he does the river manip, it'll get his encounter number back to what it's supposed to be. So if you get into a situation where you get into an encounter right before Returner's Cave, just take maybe like 6, 7, some like maybe 10 steps or so, um, just to build up your threat a little bit, and then go in. So you'll see at the start of Saban's scenario, it's going to be a little bit different than if everything went perfectly. I'm not too sure exactly how much it messes things up, but he might not know exactly when he's going to get into the counter, depending on how practiced he is with getting that second encounter before Returner's Cave.
Absolutely. So, LilSharkie getting through Vargas, no problems. He did have a bit of delay. He did get a Doomfist, and it wasn't the immediate one, but it could have been much worse, especially considering he's not on step route. So, J-Shy picking up all of the items here, including the tincture, which is generally not a required item, but sometimes you can sell it for extra money just in case you do not get the black belt from the Cyan fight.
It sells for quite an amount, 700 gold. So if you're not, if you want to take the little bit of extra time, be a little bit safe, or you want a little bit of extra money, you can do so.
Absolutely. So, J-Shy is making sure to talk to Bannon and say no to Bannon 3 times in a row. So, just making absolutely sure Bannon knows that Terra is not sure about this. So, but by doing so, not only do we skip a cutscene, but after the cutscene we are going to see, they come through and give us a Genji glove. So the other optional item you can get there is the Guardian. And what the items are supposed to do is the Guardian is supposed to be, you use one weapon with 2 hands, and it's supposed to, I believe, increase the attack or the strength, while Genji Glove is 1 weapon in either hand. And so you wield 2 weapons. Now, both of the weapons are glitched, Guardian in a bad way, Genji Glove in a good way. So we purposely make it so we get the Genji Glove. I could not tell you specifically how they are glitched. Someone told me once, and I do not remember, I'll admit. But
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
we're kind of assuming that they're glitched because we assume that the Guardian, should increase your damage because you're two-handing a single sword. You imagine, like in Final Fantasy V, increases the damage, and then you assume that you're doing you're dual wielding. I think it's written somewhere that it's supposed to reduce your damage in each weapon by 25%.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the damage adjustment just straight up doesn't work. So Genji Glove happens to be good. We see jshydell resetting here, and the resetting is part of the river manipulation. He's adjusting his encounter seed for the rest of the run, and then after he loads his game back up, he's going to keep an eye on the guard that's kind of wandering around, and he's going to make sure to leave the room at a very specific point. So let's see if he gets it. That looks to be correct.
Oh, absolutely.
So just as that guard is, because we do the encounter manipulation, we actually know exactly where the guard is going to start walking around because it's based on an RNG value that we know in advance what it's going to be. And we exit the room just as he kind of is just walked onto that carpet. That's our cue to exit the room. Yeah, and it's actually a fairly favorable window.
That's what I've heard, yes.
Because it's not just one value that your RNG value that you're looking for. It's actually, I think, 3 that are all next to each other. So you have a bit of a window to do it as long as you know what to look for.
Exactly. So, but it can still be messed up. But what's happening here now? So now that he has manipulated the river, rather than the up to as many as 9 fights that he could get on the river, he's only going to get 2, and he is currently in the process of fighting the second one in order to bring Edgar to level 11, which will give him a bit more damage, which will help in both the Ultros and the Kefka fights. Also, making sure to make the rest of the party run away so that they can make it so that he can get enough experience to get that level.
So, because we know Little Sharky isn't on the magical seed 244, river manipulation might as well be impossible. Technically, still possible. Not anything that anybody can really do. So he's just going straight to the river. Most likely, we are going to notice he's going to get more than the 2 encounters that jshydell got. Going to add a little bit of time. At the same point, he doesn't have to reset, but in the long run, it's probably going to take a little bit longer for him to get to the river.
Yeah, but we'll definitely see what RNG does. But in the meantime, it is time for our first Ultros fight. And for anyone who knows me, you know that I love this fight. Well, no, I love this character. I don't love this fight because it is one of the really dangerous fights of this game. Though, it is also fairly scripted. So once you have the mechanics and the timings of this fight down, it should go the same way every time.
Looks like jshydell was just a little slow on his adjusting to his character, so you really want to get Edgar to take that turn and start weak tricking and get a fire off before the delicious morsel, um, because that's that scripted part of that fight, and that, like the Welk fight, kind of if Ultros has to counter, if Ultros has that full ATB meter, it gets Ultros to stall a little bit, and you can hopefully jshydell will still be able to do this, or that next tentacle that's going to come up is actually going to be a full party tentacle. But he is actually being safe.
Oh, doing the health, which is incredibly safe and really good idea, because what I find with the Ultros fight, which he has completed thankfully with a 2-minute save, that's wonderful. But yeah, what I find with the Ultros fight is when you're trying to weight trick it, you're either better, if you notice at the beginning you haven't quite gotten the weight trick, to just abandon it completely and just use fires. Or at least for safety, you're going to technically potentially trigger more, but I've found I die less that way. If you're just off on that weight trick, I always find you seem more likely to just flat out die.
Yeah, it's the fire that actually causes the counterattack. So
Yeah, it
if you're
is.
off a little bit and you're not too sure you can make it, you can fire and you might get lucky and might do the counter cancel anyway. Especially if you're a little bit slow, that can end up being in a situation that can happen. Fires also happen to do more damage too.
They do. So in a lot of cases, even though you're risking the counters by using fire, you're just doing so much more damage. You're hoping to get the battle finished beforehand. So it is LilSharkie's turn to do the Ultros fight, while Jshai starts on the 3 scenarios, and we start with Sabin's scenario on purpose. Because we want to get the smoke bombs at the end, and those we're going to use to our advantage in the next 2 scenarios. But we're recruiting Shadow right away, not bothering to rename him because he just does not speak enough to make it worth it.
So you notice jshydell didn't get into the encounter that he was thinking about. It took a little bit longer. It was still a beaker encounter, so ultimately I think things should be okay.
He expected that a step earlier, but I don't think he did quite the right stepping on the world map to get it where he thought he did. Because any encounter which you get on not just on the world map, anywhere that's a regular encounter, can show up on the Veldt. And there's some encounters there, such as the stray cat encounter, which you just do not want.
So LilSharkie isn't doing the fight quite as jshydell did. getting more counterattacks. He's probably taking a page what you had mentioned, just kind of throwing out fires, getting off a little bit more damage. Maybe he's not too confident in doing the fight, uh, the kind of the strategy that we have planned for it that goes really quickly. But
Yeah.
he's able to get through it.
I found when I was doing it, it's a slower strategy for sure, but I never died to Ultros once, even when I was first learning, as long as I was just tossing out fires. But again, it is slower, so the quick kill is what you want to do ideally, but things get a little scarier if you don't have that quite down.
Yeah, your per turn damage is higher by doing the fires, but because you have to sit through the fire animation and sit through Ultros's dialogue because he's counterattacking you, the overall time just takes a little bit longer. But it's definitely safer if you're not confident in being able to do the strategy that uh, that tends to be a little bit faster if done properly.
Absolutely. So, recruiting our next character, who many people enjoy, but who can be a bit of a pain in this speed run. Um, he likes to do things he's particularly not supposed to be doing, or just not being as generally useful as some of the other characters.
LilSharkie is also opting to buy a little extra items here for safety. He bought a Phoenix Down, some Shurikens for Shadow, just in case if he gets into encounters he doesn't want to. And I think he probably only bought 2 sprint shoes earlier, so he's bought the third one there.
Okay, so the fun thing about that fight that we just did with Cyan is you would have noticed that he increased his battle speed to 1 right from the get-go, and that makes the battles faster, which generally is not what we want. But as we were using Retort, which is a counter command, we want that soldier to fight Cyan as soon as possible, so we speed up the battle to make that more likely. Definitely, you do not want to use dispatch on that soldier. For anyone who has ever done it accidentally, you know exactly why, because you can die in that fight, and it is really unfortunate.
Yeah, if you set the battle speed up to 1, it's a little bit of a hard fight because he kind of hurts for a lot of damage. He counterattacks you if you hit him, and then he has his own normal attacks you have to watch out for. I've accidentally done that, and I have died on that fight before.
So both of them are in the Imperial camp at the same time, which means they're really not that far apart. So, definitely doing quite good. Poor General Leo, the one check that Kefka has in this camp, has been summoned back by the Emperor. So Kefka has decided to do what he wants, which in most cases is not what anybody else wants. So the fun thing about these Kefka fights is not only does he look like a player character, he is coded as a player character in these fights. So there's no need to change the battle speed back to 6, because in these 2 fights, Kefka is not at all affected by the battle speed. So you can wait until these fights are done and then modify your battle speed for the next real fight you do. This one, you hit Kefka once, he insults you and runs away. Because that's the sort of quality character that he is. So making sure to remove Shadow's gear from him, as he's not going to need it, and ideally what you do in that situation is you do equip it onto Sabin, give him a little bit more... is it speed we're looking to give him, or defense?
Mostly a defense from
Okay.
the ninja gear. It's actually, and people used to do it. You could just skip Shadow altogether and just go through this area with Sabin. And it probably is faster in the Kefka and Narshe category. but it's a lot scarier because, particularly in this fight right here, Sabin's defense is a little bit on the lower side, and the fight takes longer. So you're definitely risking it. So that ninja gear though is quite a bit of an equipment boost though.
Yeah, it's definitely worth having. So, and I know I missed in the instructions multiple times to actually equip equip Sabin with that. I would just haul it off Shadow, thinking, I don't even know why. I didn't even question it, and then would just leave it in my inventory. But you definitely want to put it on Sabin for that extra perk. So Kefka, when left unchecked, does wonderful things like poisoning the river because he does not believe in honorable conduct. All he understands is that these are people who are not on his side and who are there having trouble defeating. So what's the best way to kill them? Grape Kool-Aid. So they don't like it at all. And the only two people not affected are C and this poor sentry. It looks like even the king did not make it out alive, so it is a very bad scene for everyone. Cyan is having a really quite terrible day. So, looks like LilSharkie is having his fights with Kefka, who insists that he does not look like a waiter. I don't know. I don't know that I believe him. So, Cyan doing his duty as a faithful retainer and checking on the king first, but then immediately realizes that his family also lives here. So, unfortunately, they also did not survive. So, his poor wife and son also are dead. Proving just how not nice at all Kefka is. So, the fun thing about Cyan in these battles is that he is completely out of your control. So, the only two moves he tends to do, though, is either just a regular attack or doing a dispatch. So, we don't want him to do dispatch because it doesn't do a huge amount more damage in this case, because most of these guys, he can't one-shot the guards anyways with it, and it's slower. So, we just keep hoping that he does regular attacks, especially on these grunts.
He also technically has the black belt equipped too, so if you get a little lucky and the grunts happen to attack Saiyan, he could just counterattack and then kill him too. Or we could see the even better, slightly lower chance counterattack from Shadow, where he pulls out his dog.
Oh, best counterattack. I had it happen once in a fight with the fight you fight immediately after Kefka runs away twice, where Interceptor killed both of the guys in the back. So I didn't have to use the Air Lancet and I didn't have to use a Blitz. It was beautiful and it'll never ever happen again.
Yeah, interestingly enough, the way Interceptor is kind of coded onto Shadow, he's like a status ailment.
He is.
Essentially. And that can cause for some situations where you can lose status ailments. I forget the ability, but there's a glitch with a particular ability where it like swaps your status ailments around, and it can cause Shadow to essentially permanently lose his dog. That's actually really sad when you put it that way.
I have heard of that. I believe, it's with Strago and his blue magic, I think is.
That's part of it, and it's a particular ability that like Strago can learn. I'm trying to remember what it is, but yeah, it's weird and unusual, and it's happened. I imagine it's happened to people during a casual run through, and they probably don't even notice it because it doesn't really say anything happens, and then you just I don't have my.
Yeah, and you don't have Shadow for a huge amount of time in the world of balance, and depending on how you do that, you may not have him at all in the world of ruin. So it's certainly an easy enough thing to miss.
I think the encounter is in the World of Ruin. So
Okay.
like by the time you get Shadow, like you might have forgotten that Interceptor is a thing, or maybe you thought that Interceptor isn't around anymore.
Or just a
I'm sure
lot
it's happened.
rarer than you thought.
Yeah, or
Yeah.
I think that's what I thought when I was playing the game casual. It's like, oh, I guess they reduced the chance of Interceptor showing up because I
Right.
haven't seen him show up yet.
So getting a nice preemptive here on this side attack, which is interesting. Once you get the Magitech armors, you really are, there's no stress to these battles. You're just trying to kill everyone, and it's a great time to rearrange your inventory. jshydell choosing to do the Rainbow Beam, which is, you have 4 different elemental beams, and you have 3 different enemies, so you can use one for each of them.
It's very, very important that you perform that.
It is. It is one of the run validations, so don't forget it. I actually didn't even know that was a thing until today. And it is, I will never forget now. It'll, look for it in my future runs. It's going to be amazing. So again, this is a good, really great time to rearrange your inventory. Not that there's much inventory management that even needs to be done, but you do have a lot of essentially garbage items which aren't required, which can just be shoved further down in your inventory. Making some space at the top for some of the more useful items you will be getting and using, and to move up 1 or 2 items which you will actually need.
So Jay Shadow was trying to make sure he got into the proper steps on the encounters. He wants to make sure to avoid getting into an encounter because he's on the encounter manipulation before he gets into the forest. It happens to be stray cats, and again, stray cats would show up again in the veldt. So he wants to make sure to hit those tiles, but because of what he did earlier, he actually didn't need to worry about it so much because he's essentially ahead in steps now.
Yeah, thankfully also, when it comes to inventory management, there is very little selling done in this game, if any selling done in this run, so you really don't even have to worry too much about accidentally selling items. It certainly could happen, but a lot less likely in a run like this. So, and thankfully, in terms of the auto crossbow, we only use it for the first, say, half or less of the run. So after that, we're Genji gloving things, so we don't need that auto crossbow. But now we're finding random trains out of nowhere, and Saban's like, hey, let's get on this train. It's gotta be faster than walking, right? Guys, you should know by now. Please do not trust Saban and his crazy ideas. Don't do it.
Well, I mean, it does get them through the forest. I mean, there's how would they get through the forest without getting on the train?
I don't know. Walk, climb over the train. Saban proves he can do it while on the train. Either way, they quickly determine upon getting on this train that it is actually the Phantom train and it is heading to the underworld. So, they're not dead and do not wish to be dead. So they are aiming to leave. Now, you're seeing here that Jay is not walking around the ghosts, but is instead waiting for them to move out of his way. And the reasoning for this is because there is a pretty precise step route for this train to manipulate the encounters, because some of the encounters here are incredibly dangerous. So you do not want to risk picking up extra steps by walking around the ghosts. He is taking some extra steps at the end of the second car to get this still going encounter. Farming it here ensures that you don't get a, did you say it was a 4 whisper encounter later in the next car?
Exactly.
And
Yeah,
that's
just a few steps outside the train would be a 4 whisper pack, which could be a pincer, and it would show up again in the veldt, which again could be a pincer.
Yeah, and nobody has time for pincers. They are not fun at all.
And they have really annoying attacks. They have Demi just takes forever to cast and does a bunch of damage, even though you won't die from it.
Yeah.
Just kind of a slog to sit through, especially if every single one of them gets a Demi off before you're able to take your turn.
Yeah, you really just don't want to risk that. And especially because you don't have a huge amount of healing items, and there's definitely dangerous stuff that happens. So best to avoid that if possible. And so As our party is determining, they can't escape, there's nowhere to run, and there's nowhere to hide. So Saban has his second good idea of the day, which thankfully is a much better one in only because he was successful. Um, and this idea is, I'm a big guy with lots of training. Let's see if I can carry us all across and jump these these train cars. And thankfully for everyone involved, he's correct. He can make it, and they make it a few cars away, only to find they're still being chased. So they need a new bright idea. So in this case, they detach those cars and continue on their quest to get off of this train.
So as Natara mentioned earlier, jshydell is going to want to make sure to not take extra steps here. I think he can take one extra step and still be fine, but if he happens to take a second, he's going to force an encounter before getting to the falls, which would be crosshoppers, which one would be an extra encounter, two, it would show up again in the belt, which we're trying. A lot of our routing is based on trying to avoid fights that show up in the belt that we would just rather not see.
And this train is not very nice anyways for the encounters and for the movement. So not only do you have to be precise, but there's a lot of up and downing, going in the cars in different spots. So if you're at all not used to it, but you are step routing, it's better off to take it a little slow so you don't accidentally get an incorrect, like a bad encounter. So, and these singular bombs are definitely one of the ideal encounters because there is only one bomb, making them much easier to run away from. But if your RNG is bad, they can still use Blaze on you, which is a full party attack, which I think it's a full party, or is it single party? Either way.
It could be either.
It's very not nice. It hurts a lot, and I've had it happen twice in a row, and I think you get 3 of those single bombs, so we're gonna see whether jshydell decides to validate his run.
He tries to.
Oh no.
He tried to.
As far as I'm concerned, that's valid because he tried and he had the unfortunate evil toot cast, which is random status ailments on all of the party, and Imped Shadow cannot blitz. So even though he had entered everything in previously, it meant he couldn't do it. But he had it entered and would have done it, so run valid as far as I'm concerned. But all you have to do, since this is an undead train, is use a Phoenix Down on it, and it is instantly dead, as works with most undead creatures in Final Fantasy games.
I think I was paying attention properly, and I'm pretty sure jshydell's steps were all looking good. So we should be able to avoid that crosshopper encounter before the falls. And again, that's doubly good because that encounter would show up again on the Velt, guaranteed. And I'm pretty sure it would show up as the first fight you're trying to get Gao to join you, which
It
is
does.
kind of an annoying situation because they can berserk you and you can get into a situation where you kill everything, but if one of your characters is still berserked and you're trying to use the dried meat on Gao, but instead you attack him.
Yeah, it is definitely not good. I know it may have even happened in my race, and I know what I do in that situation is I let the berserked character, if it's only one of them, kill the enemy. So if Gao does appear, that gives me just enough time to give him the dried meat with the unberserked character. But if both characters are berserked, it's not particularly helpful. Yeah, so it is a bad encounter, and yes, I can tell you from experience, it is your first one when you're on step route and trying to get Gao. Not nice. Oh, look at that imp.
During this little, it's essentially a cutscene. There's a timer ticking down. I think it's like 30 seconds or something. And during that time, you can kind of do whatever you want, including being in the menu, reorder stuff. You saw jshydell do some equipment changes. And now, okay, it's faded out. You can continue on. He's going to take a safety save before the falls because this next fight, if he does it well, he is going to skip a boss. But if he messes up, you can kind of have a bad time. So he may be looking over. He knows he's ahead. Always want to be safe.
Yeah, you definitely do. So, LilSharkie almost to the end of the train. We're gonna see whether he validates his run. So it's time for us to dive down into a waterfall because that's definitely a good idea. Apparently, it is the fastest way to get to the next part. Um, so we're going to do a neat little trick here, which is going to allow us to skip most of this process, and it involves killing off Cyan. So you have to make sure that between the Phantom Train and this fight, you do have 2 Phoenix Downs. To be without one of those definitely ends poorly. And getting the suplex for LilSharkie, very good, run valid. So what the strategy here is for Jshy and soon LilSharkie is you, between both Sabin and Cyan, you attack and kill Cyan. Sabin brings him back with the remaining Phoenix Down that you have, and once Cyan's ATB is charged, he will use a retort, and which sets us up for the glitch. And what happens then, we're gonna just watch and I'll explain it once it happens because it's really quite neat and very much a what situation. Because what usually happens in this fight is you just keep killing piranhas for about a minute or so until a hidden timer ticks off, and once you've that timer has counted down and you've killed piranhas, it'll give you the boss. However, by using retort and then using a suplex on that enemy, you are doing a magic attack and a physical attack at the same time, and something about that makes it both because Cyan died and came back, that triggers his glitch, so he uses the retort even though you didn't attack him, so he kills the enemy. And the fact that you did a suplex and did that retort basically at the same time on that enemy just glitches out how the battle ends, so it doesn't go to the next set of piranhas, and it certainly does not trigger the boss, so you just skip that whole sequence. You don't have to wait on the timer, and instead you finish falling down the waterfall and recruit Gao, who we all adore, and who this tournament is named after because if you want to see some RNG, it's coming up. So the general strategy here is you want to make sure to cure up Cyan as soon as you come out here, because especially if you're on step route, you will get an encounter pretty shortly thereafter. And 31 HP is a pretty dangerous spot to be in for Cyan, even with Sabin having the True Knight. So you cure him up and progress because you want to make it 2 Moblets in order to pick up some dried meat, which will allow you to recruit Gao when you find them. Now this is why I was mentioning RNG, because Gao can show up in any number of fights. There's a few enemy packs he can't, and if you have a party member dead, or if you have a pincer attack, like is currently up on jshydell's screen, he will not appear. So you're hoping as soon as you do get your dried meat that he will show up in one of the 2 encounters you have as you walk to your next place. And if not, you have to farm encounters until he shows up. And the RNG for that is not something you can manipulate. He has a 5 and 8 chance of showing up after every eligible battle. So you kind of just have to hope and pray. And what was the number that we figured out last time, which was the max number of fights someone has gone through to try and get Gao?
Well, I don't know the max number, but Elmegas had 8 fights where Gao showed up after the 8th fight, which is particularly bad luck.
Yeah.
Not, I would be pretty annoyed if that happened to me.
Yeah,
I think my personal best is only 6.
nice. I can't remember mine, but I seem to recall on a bad run I had that I had a lot. It was somewhere between 5 and 6. It tends to be, again, there's no actual fact here, but it tends to be either he comes fairly early on or you have to wait quite a while for Gao to show up. So our entire tournament is called Wherefore Art Gao, which we know is not proper Old English, just it's okay. But it's because we spend time waiting for him. Oh, that was bad. So, the reason that is bad is because one of the scenarios where Gao will not join your party is if you have a dead party member. Thankfully, looks like Jshydell picked up an extra Phoenix down. You can also use a tent in that scenario in order to bring your dead character back. If you don't have either of those things, though, you have to walk all the way back to either use an inn or buy an item to bring your dead character back and start hunting again. But it does mean he did have to run away from that second encounter after not getting Gao on the first.
Not really a whole lot that he can do,
No, exactly.
but he reacted properly. He got Gao to show up on the third fight, so it's still not too bad. He could have gotten Gao on that second fight potentially if Cyan had died.
Exactly.
But 3 fights isn't too shabby either. But once
It's
it starts
really
getting more than 3 fights,
And he also fed the dried meat to Gao. And that's one of the tricky things that happens sometimes when you're moving fast. And then again, I'm sure most, if not all, runners have done at least once in this category or while running this game, which is to feed that dried meat to someone who is not Gao, meaning you need to walk all the way back and buy some more. Don't do that. It's sadness for everybody, but especially you, the person who has to walk back. So this particular cutscene is a minute and a half, but the one upside to that is it is a mandatory cutscene, so it's not like you're getting a minute and a half that somebody else is not.
one of my favorite parts about this cutscene. So most text in this game, you have to mash to be able to go through.
Yes.
The exception is anything that happens during a battle. You don't have to press A repeatedly to get advance all the text. You can actually just hold A. We're still in a battle here. We can just hold down the A button and not really have to pay attention to what we're doing because it's still considered a battle. Holding A works here.
I love it. Yeah, I definitely agree. So again, even why it's a longer one, you get that. Plus, where just because of the nature of this cutscene, everyone's bouncing around, especially Gao, and moving. So it is fairly entertaining, even though you see it time and time again. You're just like, where are they now? You can kind of judge by their position on the screen how far they are in the cutscene, rather than having to actually check in with the text.
But one of the second fight, one of the main reasons we do encounter manipulation, partially it's for being able to manipulate River, but really the main thing is for the Veldt. So you can manipulate what encounters you can expect to get in the Veldt, not only by knowing what encounters you've already been in, but just part of being on a particular encounter seed. And most seeds, deciding to show off a little bit of swag there. Most seeds have the annoyance of having a bunch of can't runnable fights. The Templar Soldier encounter shows up most of the time, which is why sometimes earlier when people ran this game, they didn't necessarily shoot for seed 244. They shot for any seed where they could avoid that Templar Soldier pack. Because while it's not as good as seed 244, it's still pretty good because it avoids that really annoying counter that takes a. And unfortunately, we have a back attack on LilSharkie's side. Not going to get Gao to show up there. They decided to fight it anyway, but Gao wasn't going to show up. They can only show up on a normal or preemptive fight. Pincer attack and back-to-back attacks, and certain formations, Gao won't show up.
So yeah, we definitely hope we don't get those and we get the regular ones. So you definitely have to be careful with lining up attacks too. both because you want to kill things as quickly and efficiently as possible, especially if you're off step route, but you don't want to accidentally line up an attack and risk attacking Gao if he shows up, because then he will run, and you have to wait another 5 and 8 chance to get him, and sometimes he just does not play nice at all. So, yeah, gonna have to sit and grind it up here and hope that he doesn't have to wait for too many encounters. So, but we do have Jshydell into the trench, which is really generally not very nice. So we're gonna see how it goes from him. The idea is to run away from everything. So in that vein, it is often best to have Cyan dead if you can arrange it, because as previously explained, each character has a individual run gauge, which they have to fill up before they can run, and Cyan's is the largest, so he is the slowest to run away. So, yeah. They are progressing.
I imagine jshydell saved before getting to the Serpent Trench, because, and this is when I was racing him just for fun last week, he got a pincer attack, and Sabin had already died, and from an earlier fight from the bomb, I think, and he got really unlucky on one particular fight, and both Cyan and Gao died in the middle of the trench. And actually, is probably the only reason I won that race, because I made my own mistakes.
Yeah, exactly. It can, the trench really doesn't play very nice, so, you just want to dodge as much as possible and hope the other people's trench is worse than yours. And also that it's nice in terms of what type of encounter you get, either giving you lots of preemptives or just dodging the back attacks and pincers. You definitely don't want the pincer attacks.
jshydell making it out of the trench.
Yeah.
Looks like he should be able to save a little bit of time. He's actually on pretty good pace. Should be seeing a pretty decent PB from him if he keeps it up.
And he'll definitely feel good about that. So, but for now, he has to dodge the not very nice NPCs of this place, which I believe is Nikia.
Correct.
So he's buying as many smoke bombs as he can possibly afford, but first he bought a mithril pike, and that is one of the strategies that people are starting to use recently, because the other option is to get a rune edge inside of Narshe, but that requires you to go through a cave filled to the brim with muggles, so it can be really quite difficult to dodge things in that scenario. Jshydell removing the sprint shoes from Cyan, so he may have only bought 2 pairs I didn't see.
Right.
But he's
He bought
being
the
safe. Okay.
he bought the star pendants for safety during
Gotcha.
Mount Colts, and I'm probably going to use it again in lock scenario just
Mhm.
to avoid getting poisoned. And he didn't opt to. There's another opportunity to buy sprint shoes when you pick up Shadow. He's actually he's probably used to running glitchless, because in glitchless we tend to do terrace scenario after Sabin scenario. In the end, it really doesn't matter. It's slightly more optimal, I think, by a fight to do lock scenario first over terrace, but in the end, you do Sabin scenario first, and then you can kind of do the other two.
Yeah.
Where it
The
doesn't
key
matter
is to have those
much.
smoke bombs, so as long as you have those, you are pretty set. But the one bad thing about being back on the river here is you are once again have Bannon in your party, and if he dies, it is still game over. That has not changed since the last time we had him in our party. So once you're off the river, that is a much less likely scenario, and it's still not too bad because we now have smoke bombs, but needless to say, it is not very nice in general.
one of the great things about smoke bombs is you can use them during pincer attacks.
Yes, you can. So you still have to wait for your ATB to fill up, as it tends to be fairly low in pincers. But yes, you don't have to worry about killing anything. You just smoke bomb and run. So, most of Terra's scenario, once you're past the river, is honestly just running through Narshe, smoke bombing everything, and I think the hardest part is going through the security system, which is coming up in a screen or two. And the strategy around this, the security system in casual, is that a light comes up, it shows you the path, you follow the path, and if you go off the path, you have to tag a glimmering light in order to not fight a not very nice encounter. However, we're only going to follow the path for about halfway through until we get to the door. And then we are going to purposely step off the path because thankfully, if you press and hold A when you step off the path, the first frame input it takes is the correct one for tagging the glimmering light, so we don't have to worry about an encounter, and we don't have to worry about walking that entire really winding path. So, LilSharkie in the second half of the trench. Everyone's still alive and in good health, so that is a good position for him to be in.
He actually got into a particularly scary fight on the very first fight as a single angler form.
Oh, yeah.
And that has the potential of, on its first turn, doing Akarake, which will, I believe it is pretty consistent at wiping the party. Most of the time, we'll opt to, instead of trying to run from that fight, we'll just throw out a single R bolt from Sabin just to kill it off. It's a little more consistent that it works out in your favor, where it will kill it. You can kill it before it can kill you. But he was able to still get away without it doing anything particularly nasty.
Which is great. Just because an encounter can be bad doesn't mean it necessarily will be bad each time. But yeah, it's definitely something you don't want to risk, because when it does do that awkward rake, you're just very unhappy, and it's right at the beginning. Well, if a bad thing like that's going to happen, you would rather it be at the beginning. But yeah, it's certainly unfortunate. So, picking up the smoke bombs for LilSharkie. Not having a good time with the NPCs. It's one of the reasons I really don't like Nakia. There's just so many NPCs and they're all moving at different speeds, and it always feels like they are aiming to get in your way.
If you decide to buy the Mithril Pike, it can be a little more consistent to just, instead of going down, to kind of go left and around, just because there aren't any NPCs over there. Particularly that really slow one that jshydell got stuck behind for a few seconds
I
there.
find that slow NPC and the fast kid are the two worst ones. So we now get to see Locke's scenario both at the same time. So this is going to be interesting. The key thing here is putting Locke in the second position and giving him a set of sprint shoes. What that does is the shoes allow him to walk fast, so he can clip right through the guard, as you saw. We don't need to walk through South Figaro, that takes time. And we want to put him in the second position because there is a potential pincer attack that you can get in this cave, and if you are in the first position, that becomes a back attack for Locke, which can be potentially fatal. So instead, we are going to put him in the second position, which means he will be front facing to the bear if he happens to get into that pincer. And that potential attack is not until the room where you pick up the Thunder Rod.
Well, actually, in this case, because he decided to do Terra's scenario before Locke's scenario, I think it's going to be on this next one.
Oh, interesting. Yes, I didn't consider that would change the.
Because the way the game draws what encounter you're going to get into, it's looking at not only the seed you're on, but also what encounter number. It has a counter that it ticks up. So instead, not to mention he's on different steps, so he's getting into encounters at different times. He got two.
We got another one.
Probably another reason why it's a little bit better to do lock scenario first.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I remember from glitchless, it's a lot of encounters in this version when if you do lock scenario
Yeah.
second. But we do that for particular reasons in glitchless.
For sure. Now, LilSharkie is in a particularly not great position. Thankfully, he's able to do a smoke bomb, but he is poisoned. So he's having to cure himself fairly regularly with not many curative items and with no poison curing items. So once he gets to the spring, he'll be fine. Now, we are fighting a boss here with Jshydell, and we're finding out very quickly why it was okay to skip all of South Figaro and why we picked up that Thunder Rod. So, Thunder Rods automatically do max damage and bypass magic defense of what they're attacking. So, as you saw, they just one shot that boss. So, the ghost who was talking to him didn't actually need the help.
So you can see on LilSharkie's screen why some people either opt to pick up the antidote in the Returner's Cave or buy the Star Pendant in South Figaro when you first go there, just so this doesn't happen where you're poisoned and you have to keep coming in the menu to heal yourself. But he got to Tunnel Armor. He can kill Tunnel Armor before it takes a turn as long as he menus properly.
Yeah, and at this point, now that he's made it to the battle, the poison really doesn't matter at all because he's taking so few ticks. Like, the poison ticks really only matter when you're walking more so than in battle. Um, and as long as he, again, like Takaze says, as long as he just menus correctly and gets that attack off, he is out of that scenario. And now he has to finish up with Terra's as he has not done it yet. But Jshydell is done with all three scenarios. So all of the parties are converging on Narshe and introducing each other, having a bit of drama and cutscenes about, whether the Empire is on their side or attacking or whatnot. And it is going to lead to the big final battle of this run where they are going to fight Kefka. So it looks like, and we have a Moogle friend with us. So Locke, who walked through his entire scenario alone, now has a friend. So how that works is all of the character information, except for Locke and Terra, is filled up with Moogles because we had that big Moogle fight at the beginning of the run, and the game needed a place to store all of those extra characters. So it stored them in those spots. Which is all fine and dandy, but unfortunately, usually what happens is when you get to a spot and you name a character for the first time, that spot gets overwritten with that character's information, their stats, and all of that. However, the person who Kutan here was supposed to be never got introduced, never got named. So they don't exist as far as the game goes. They go to that slot in the memory to pull that information, and all they have is a Moogle. So it looks really cool. General Kutan, really great. However, as with all of the Moogles except for Mog, who is an actual player character, you cannot equip this Moogle. You cannot change its relics. I don't even know if they can level up. Generally, it's pretty useless.
Yeah, they can level up, but their
Okay.
stats are pretty poor since you can't equip Espers on them, even if you get to the point with them having Espers. Like, you can't get the cool stat generation that Espers have. They're just bad. The only category which we do that in ends up being the sketch run, which we just don't need Celeste at all.
Yeah, exactly. Because as much as we all love Celeste, for many of these she's just, we don't need her for sketch, and we don't need her for this one. So, because as you saw, like with the Moogle battle where we picked the most stacked party, we built our own stacked party here. So, we stuck Kutan in one party, Terra in the other, and then put our remaining 4 really good people into a party by themselves, and leading Locke to languish alone. As much as we love him. So immediately.
Locke is protecting Bannon or something.
Yeah, sure. He's treasure hunting Bannon or something. So, I'm not quite sure what Jay is doing.
He's
I
doing a
see.
slightly different setup here. He might actually be doing, well, he did buy the Mithril Pike, so he should be. I've had conversations with him, and he's kind of familiar with a lot of the glitchless strats, which we do this fight a little bit differently, where some
Yeah.
people do where they instead do auto crossbow, put the Atlas armlet on Cyan for a little bit of extra dispatch damage.
Yeah.
Ultimately, it ends up being the same, but it takes a little bit of extra menuing time. Looks like he's probably doing a little bit both, where he put the Atlas armlet to increase the dispatch damage,
Yeah.
but still having Genji glove on to
Yeah.
have the nice crit.
And unfortunately, did get an incorrect blitz input right from the get-go. So that is some damage we really can't afford to lose, but hopefully it will still turn out okay. Looks like LilSharkie has also reached the end of Terra's scenario, so won't be much longer before he joins us here.
Really hoping to not see that Ice 3 on everybody because this.
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh, a second bad blitz input. So blitzes are really hard to do anyways. For those who don't know, the ones you don't have to Street Fighter them with doing the curves, the diagonal inputs. So for Orbolt, you can just press either down, down, left or down, left, left, and both of them will read as Orbolt. And the same works for any of them. Oh, he got through no problem. Very nice.
the Ice 2 happened to not be an Ice 2, was a Bolt instead.
That saved him. So the final time for jshydell is 1:30:32. So congratulations on that finish. Very well done. And that is a new PB, a 5-minute PB in fact. 1:30:31 is his new non-SRL time. So congratulations both on winning your first race and on getting a PB. So GG to our runners. So let's just finish off and watch LilSharkie finish off, see how he does once he gets through the cutscenes, because that's all he has left is cutscenes and getting to Kefka.
Just as jshydell is finishing up, we're just getting into the almost done with these cutscenes. We'll see how LilSharkie is able to handle the final fight, see what his final time ends up being.
Absolutely. And so what you have to keep in mind with these sort of marathon competitive settings is there's a lot of stress on them, a lot of pressure. So even the best of runners can just make mistakes and things happen. Even if you're not particularly nervous, sometimes things just happen in any of these runs. And so it definitely makes these tournaments interesting because you can see it happen to any runners, but especially the newer runners. So it's good to see how all of these races happen. This particular round is the first round of the Switch matchups, so it means it's nobody has any wins yet, so it's just completely random, all of the matchups. So in some cases like this one, these runners are both pretty evenly matched with their PBs. Actually, LilSharkie was 3 minutes ahead on his PB before they started here today. So it's just interesting to see how it plays out.
Yeah, LilSharkie, if I remember correctly, set that PB during the race that was with me, jshydell, and LilSharkie.
Nice.
jshydell was on pace to get a substantial PB, but he had some pretty unfortunate mishap in the trench, and then again at Kefka, where Kefka kind of bodied him with an Ice 2.
Yep, so
he was able to pull through today.
Yep, so it's no surprise he got that really nice PB here now. So LilSharkie did take the safety save before here, which is always a good idea. I'm a big believer in safety saves in general, but especially when you're in a competition like this, it's a very good idea to safety save in certain key points, and this is one of those key points because again, if just anything goes wrong, either with timings, blitz inputs, or just bad RNG, Kefka can wipe out your party, and that is not how you want to lose. I would rather pick up a minute or two, but be able to complete, than just essentially lose a lot of time. Especially after all of those cutscenes. So yeah, did make sure not to walk out too early on that green soldier, because if you walk in even a moment too early, he would have had to fight that soldier, which is both a waste of time and he takes damage he really doesn't want to risk because, again, you want to be on your game for fighting Kefka, and both of them dodge the rider. So let's just see how it goes here. We're going to swap music here for a second.
Good ATB on Sabin, able to do the blitz first. Gets the blitz input correctly. He didn't fully ATB wait the blitz with Sabin, so we'll ideally now. Oh, he's going for some fun, but too bad Kefka's actually immune to suplex. So he actually lost quite a bit of damage there.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, if Kefka makes it to his third turn, he has a chance of full party ice too, and you do not want that. Though, if that was his third turn, he just attacked.
Yep, that was his third
Oh,
turn.
that
He
was
has
incredibly lucky.
it's a 1 in 3 chance to attack, 1 in 3 chance to bolt, and 1 in 3 chance to ice too. And I think for deciding to whether or not to multi-target the spells, I think it's just a 50-50. So it's a 1 in 6 chance of getting full party dice too. But
excellent. So LilSharkie is done with an official SRL time of 1:35:12. So GG to both of our racers. I have posted their information in the chat, so please give them a follow. They've worked very hard today and both did really well in their races.
I think you worked pretty hard today too. You
Yeah.
deserve a follow. If nobody is following